Good morning. My name is Fred Brewington. I am an attorney working with a person that I've known for a number of years and who I respect in the community, whose name is Ronald Lanier. He's seated to my right. We're here once again to talk about something that we shouldn't be talking about in the year 2016. We're talking about not only police brutality and police misconduct, but the issue of racism, particularly with this police department of the village of Garden City has shown its ugly head once again. You'll hear from Mr. Lanier in a few minutes, and you'll hear from other members of the community, including members of the law enforcement community, as well as persons that are activists in the community about what a plague this is in our community, and with regard to someone who has served well. Mr. Lanier is a retired corrections officer, the Sheriff's Department of Nassau County. We served for over 2 decades. And in that service, he sought to be respected and treated with dignity. You'll learn as we go through this that on November 30th, 2016, as he was in his community, there were a number of things that he did not expect. One of those things that he did not expect was being treated as though he was subhuman. And that's what happened with regard to the Garden City Police, of a member of the service, a person that served our community for far too long. We'll talk more about the details as we go forward, but I want to make sure that everybody understands this is not something that is a passing matter. This is a serious, serious situation that cuts deep into our community, because when one of the people that goes out of their way to try and serve the community as a law enforcement officer is treated as though he is trash in the gutter, that is a serious matter, because no one should be treated that way, not our young people, and most certainly not someone who served the community for over 20 years. So I'm going to allow him at this point to read a prepared statement. We will take questions. After he speaks, we're going to hear from Mr. Dennis Jones, from one of the law enforcement agencies, and then Mr. Damon Jones, and then we're going to hear from Diane Goins from New York Communities for Change, and then we'll open it for questions. So at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Lanier to read his prepared statement.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ronald Lanier. I never thought I would be sitting before you telling this truth. The truth is that 2 days ago, my 22 years of service as a law enforcement officer working for the Nassau County was snatched away from me, made to be meaningless. As I shopped in a community where me and my family reside, I was stripped of my service, stripped of my humanity, stripped of my dignity. While I know the work of my brothers officers is not easy, there's a difference from doing your job and throwing all reasons and dignity to the wind. I served 4 years in the Army, the Armed Forces. I have worked hard at Ground Zero and 9/11. I've never been cursed, physically abused, beaten, treated like a slave, as I was 2 days ago by the Garden City Police. If there's a sign of the time, we as a community in the city police, this is a sign of the time as we're a community, as a community, and the nation must stand together and say no to racism, to brutality, and not to abuse of authority. As I identify myself as a former correction officer, they refuse to believe me or even give me the chance to prove this fact. The officers were completely out of control, brutal, unreasonable, and I told them that you had the wrong one, and they laughed. But now, I'm not laughing. Now.
This time I'm going to ask Dennis Jones to introduce himself and provide a short statement.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Jones from the Law Enforcement Alliance. I served 25 years and retired from the NYPD. So I kind of place myself in Mr. Lanier's shoes. This is something that we've seen time and time again all across New York, all across America. This is something that has to stop. A police officer is a human being. Yes, a black police officer is not considered, or a black law enforcement officer is not considered a human being as we see here. It's something that has to stop. It's something that we have to get down to the bottom of. Racism is alive and well and sits within our law enforcement agencies. And we're hoping that the Garden City Police Department will come forward with respect, identifying their officers, disciplining their officers for this unsenseless act. But we're going to be vigilant and watch how this turns out. I've been in contact with the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Officers. Blacks in law enforcement are here also, and they'll be speaking after me. But we have a number of organizations, the Guardians Association, that are going to be looking at this. They're going to be taking a serious look and assisting Mr. Brewington in trying to make a change here in New York. This should be the end of these cases, but we know that this is not the end. We know that we're going to be looking at this again. I've sat here with Mr. Brewington a number of times on cases just like this. So, again, we're going to be very vigilant in watching all of the outcomes of this case. Thank you.
As Damon.
All right, good morning. My name is Diane Goins. I'm the chair of New York Communities for Change. And if you've been following what we've been doing as far as racism in Garden City, we've been fighting for housing. This is nothing new in Garden City. Now we have the police officer, a member of the community, treated like dirt. And this is not new. My brother, 20 years ago, correction officer, stopped in Garden City because he's visiting a friend. And they want to follow him to make sure he goes to that house where he's going. I said, so nothing is changing, and it's got to stop. So we, as members of the community, are behind you 100%, 100%, because enough is enough. And we're not afraid of you, whoever is watching. We're not afraid of you anymore. We're standing up now because you cannot continue to treat us the way that you're treating us.
Good morning. My name is Damon Jones. I'm the New York representative of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, and I also bring support from Terry McGee, who is the president of the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice. As black law enforcement professionals, we support our brother 100%. We have continued to see black officers off duty, plain clothes, shot at or killed, and beaten by their white counterparts. And these incidents in New York has never happened in the reverse. Y'all could look up the Police on Police Shooting Task Force report when they was trying to address this. And local police departments throughout New York State has not abide to their recommendations. So we still see incidents of black officers. And if we as black officers, I've been a correction officer for Westchester County for 27 years. I've been racial profiled. I have made complaints on other officers. And we have been fighting even the killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, who was a retired officer that was shot and killed and called the N-word by White Plains Police. So this is no new news for the black community. And we are still looking at our local leaders, our preachers, and our elected officials to address this matter. And they have failed to put policies and procedures in place to stop this happening. How many more times are we going to hear about these incidents before our leaders pass some type of legislation to hold police accountable for their racist acts? We cannot continue like this. So we stand with this brother here and his family, and we're going to continue to fight throughout New York State and the country so there's proper accountability and legislation. So these things need to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Let me just be very clear. Standing and seated with us are members of the community, law enforcement community, and the community. Members of New York Communities for Change. We have preachers here. We have family here. We have people from the Green Party. and people from the left, people from the right. But there's one thing that we have to stand together on, is that abuse by police of anybody, but no less a member who served the community, is unacceptable. We want to be also clear that far too often these police go unnamed and unidentified.
That's right.
Well, I want to be real clear to everybody in this room. Today we're outing these officers. We're going to tell the story and show their faces. So if you take a look at that screen that's up there, those two officers in the forefront, those two gentlemen that claim that are right here, that gentleman, I've got my pointer on his face, those two gentlemen are the officers that beat Ronald Lanier on the floor of Western Beef and treated him like he was a dog. And they get their pictures, put their pictures on the internet, make sure that they know that they're not going to escape justice, even from the community, because what they've done to this man after 22 years of service is unacceptable. Look at their faces and tell the story, because those two gentlemen that still remain unnamed, members of the Garden City Police Department, need to be outed. They need to be across the entire internet and make them trend, so that their faces are seen every place. So wherever they go, they're identified as beater, racist, abuser. That's who they are, and we're going to make sure that their faces are out there. Is that true, community?
Yes!
That's right.
At this point, we're going to open it up for questions, and if you're going to need some more detail, let me just give you this before we ask the questions. Mr. Lanier was going out to buy cooking oil to cook for his daughters. As he was in the store and he was about to make his purchases, he was told from behind in very rough language that he was to stand still, put his hands behind his back. He responded, "What's going on?" and complied. They then attempted to break his arm, threw him to the ground, cuffed him. He identified himself as an officer, and they told him, excuse my language, "You're no effing officer. Get the F out of here." And then they continued to beat him about his body, his head, his arms, his ribs, and beat him in such a way where he had to scream for help. He screamed to everybody in the store, "Please take a picture of this. Somebody pull out your camera. Somebody help me." And the reason this happened was not because he was doing anything wrong, but because they say they were looking for a black man. And the black man just happened to be an officer who was in the store. Not every black man is a suspect.
That's right.
Not every black man should be treated in a way like they are a dish rag. But when you treat a member of our community this way, whether you are guilty or not guilty, you can't beat somebody down, especially when they're not giving you any resistance. So those two officers on that screen need to be ashamed of themselves.
That's right.
And the Garden City police officers that train them need to be ashamed of themselves. And we're calling for their jobs and a full investigation, not only by the Garden City Police, by the Attorney General of the state of New York.
That's right.
Because this is an action that is unacceptable. We'll take questions at this time.
Fred, who, in fact, were police searching for?
They apparently were searching for someone that they claimed that they were chasing. We don't know the name or identity of that individual, but we do know one thing, that at the point that they beat Mr. Lanier and they took him into custody and they had him in the back of the car and they were taunting him while he was in the back of the car, a radio call came across that said, "Oh, we have the suspect. He's on the roof of Western Beef." And at that point, no one apologized. The sergeant just said, "Cut him loose." And no one said, "We're sorry, officer. We're sorry that we beat you. We're sorry we mistook you," even though they didn't have a good description of who they were looking for. So that doesn't, when you don't have a good description, you don't just start scooping up black people.
That's right.
That time is gone.
That's right.
That time is gone. It never was appropriate, but that time is gone. So when you scoop up black people, young, old, service, no service, veteran, 9/11 server, you got something to answer for. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Yes?
Fred, read, they said cut him loose, but then did they get an ambulance for him?
No.
No.
So how
No,
did-
they didn't offer an ambulance. They didn't ask him for his ID. You want to explain that?
After they got the call that the suspect was on the roof, the sergeant told the arresting officer to let me go. I proceeded to get out the car. The sergeant that was on duty, the head of the, I guess, the command at that time, stated, "Do you have your ID?" I said, once again, I told you guys my ID is in the back seat of my vehicle, which my vehicle is right next to the patrol officer's car. Sergeant, I escorted the sergeant to my car, opened the back seat, showed him my badge and ID. He looked at it like he was in shock, walked away, didn't even write the stuff down.
Did they take your name?
Nothing. I go to Winthrop Hospital, go get x-rays, everything. I said, "Where's my report to this incident?" He said, go to Garden City Police Department and it will be there. I took a picture of, I didn't have nothing to write. I thought up taking my camera. I took a snapshot of his badge. I went to the hospital, got my x-rays, proceeded to go to the Garden City Department. They said, "Oh my God, we're glad you're here. We just was talking about the incident that occurred at Western Beach. We had you on the incident sheet as John Doe." And the sergeant that I showed the ID, guess where he was at? He was standing next to the fucking lieutenant.
It's okay. Okay. Other questions? It's okay. It's all right.
And after that, he comes 2 minutes later, the sergeant disappears. I asked the lieutenant, "Where's the sergeant?" "He's on duty."
Did,
Who does that? You know, imagine if I had my gun at that time. It could have went either way.
Right?
It could have went either way. I'm tired of hearing officers constantly talking about we have to retrain. We don't have to retrain. We gotta let them be held accountable for their actions. That's what needs it to be. You can train all day, but you can't change the heart.
That's right.
Remember those
That's right.
words.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
Ms.
That's right.
You read a statement, but can you tell us from your heart why this is so devastating to you?
Because I put my work in. I fought for my country. I volunteered for 9/11. I did 22 and a half years of the Department of Corrections. I took an oath to protect and serve the safety and security of the Sheriff's Department. And this is what I got back. And I can't use and identify and tell another officer brother that I'm on the job and it doesn't make any difference.
That's right.
That hurts. And you're going to throw me on the ground of a Western beef and everybody looking at me as I'm a society abuser. It doesn't work well for me, nor my family. It taunted my image. I don't even want to go back in that Western beef. For what?
Lanier,
Yes, Mr.
we hear about racism in society.
Yes.
And you read about it, you witness it, you hear stories from friends, and you're involved in it. What's the difference between hearing about racism and being part of something where you're part of it?
It hurts more for me to be involved in it because I know it always existed. Knew that. Other people don't understand this culture that we live in, this space that we was born in. They would never get it. And when it hit home to me, I heard it all around the country. And for somebody to grab me by the neck at the supermarket, and I'm telling you, I'm one of you, and you disrespect it, it was just like, you just another black dude. I don't really have the answers what they were thinking. I told you, I'm on the job, I'm on the job, I'm on the job. My ID is in my car. Shut the F up. Get on the ground.
yes.
They beat me up all through the ribs or whatever. So when they was beating me, they had me handcuffed, and he was like, "Oh, you want to be a tough guy?" Then they started beating me in the ribs. So I'm like, my hands are tied. So how can I stop the beating? So what came to my mind was video. So I told the audience, "Yo, take your cameras out, start filming. I'm on the job." That's when they stopped because I knew video would stop it. Because it's prevalent now, and that's the only word that I could come up with.
Could you tell everybody what the officers said when you told them about the beating?
He said, "Show me the bruises."
And he said, "What are you going to do about the beating?" And the officer said, "Yo, well, where are your bruises? Show me the bruises."
But and then after the sergeant that told him to uncuff me, he was behind the sergeant still taunting me, and the sergeant had to say, "Stop it! How do you hire people behind you to act in that manner?" It's like it's the protocol. I think that's the lifestyle that Garden City the police department walks, talks. They live, they breathe that, and to see it for my own self is disgraceful for me to say I even worked in law enforcement.
So the officers beat you with their hands?
With their hands, and my back was turned, so I don't know if they had something in their hands or whatever. My back was on, I was face down. They on top of me. One jugging me on this side, the other one jugging me on that side. When I call, I can't even laugh because I'm so bruised up in here. When I lay in the bed, my wife had to help me out of the bed.
I did not hear about the hospital report.
He was seriously bruised.
Seriously bruised.
They gave him pain medication.
Pain medicine.
But he actually has doctor's appointments this evening because he's retired. And one of the things that he's experiencing is some of the pain that he has from the injury that he had pre-existed.
But did you ever determine?
Yes, Ms. Gussoff.
Did you ever determine what the suspect that was ultimately arrested was charged with, or what he was?
They didn't even tell me that. I didn't know anything. They didn't tell me why you was on the ground. They didn't tell me that there was a suspect involved. They didn't tell me how I found out where the suspect was at. I went back into Western Beach to try to find out me a witness that saw what was taking place. I saw the deli guy. He gave me his number and everything and said, "Ronald, whatever you need, tell your lawyer to call me." As I was walking out, they had the suspect on the patrol car. 20 officers around him. That's who I knew the suspect. We didn't even fit the same description. After I got to Garden City Police Department, the detective said, "I'm going to be honest with you."
Lieutenant.
The lieutenant. "I'm going to be honest with you. We only had a vague description of him."
And you wanted
Vegas
to
black, right?
What was
Yeah.
it I wanted?
I don't. They claim.
I really
they
don't know.
claim
They
they
never
were
told
chasing
me.
him. They claim that.
They don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
You know,
They
well,
never told me.
unfortunately,
They
yeah.
never said I'm sorry. They never gave me any inkling why I was on that ground. That's what hurts the most. It was just like I was just a regular citizen. Like, you're not the guy. Beat it.
So you
Who
went
d-
in the patrol car when they let you go?
For 20 minutes. Sat me in the car for 20 minutes. And another officer opened the passenger door. I guess they really thought I was a suspect. He looks at me and says, "So where's your partner at?" So everything-
Right now, we filed a notice of claim. There is no dollar amount attached to it because there is no suit. But the first thing we're looking for is the elusive justice. Whatever that turns out to be in this situation, one of the things we know is that those two officers that are up there on their screen need to be called into account right now. There's no waiting for tomorrow. They need to be stripped of their guns. They need to be stripped of their badges. They need to be put on suspension with no pay and make sure that they don't get a benefit of the public dollar that they just violated. Because what we're asking for now, if we're talking about monetary, take their salaries away from them and let them feel some pain. Because Dr. King knew what it would take to change this country. When other people understood what the impact was dollar-wise on their abilities to take care of their families and take away their abilities when they do that to us all the time, take away their pocket change and see how they change.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
And there's 4 officers?
There were 2 officers that beat him, and then there the supervising officers that refused to really take any action when the officer was standing right behind the sergeant and taunting this man when they said he wasn't a suspect. No one gave him the common decency of saying, "We're so sorry, sir. We apologize. Can we give you a ride someplace? Are you okay?" Instead of saying, "Yeah, we beat you and we're sorry," they said, "Oh yeah, show us your bruises." That's outrageous. That's outrageous. And what they need to do, they don't need sensitivity. They need to be sensitized out of the entire system.
That's
Do you
right.
have
Then-
their names? Do we have?
I'm sure you guys are going to get their names because they wouldn't tell us their names.
I took the pictures while I was walking out. I took the pictures, and that's when they looked like that.
And when those officers,
I'm the one that snapped.
and when you took the pictures, what did they tell you?
Oh, they was like, huh. They was just chuckling or whatever. But I think, as a law enforcement, I've been around different behavior. Behavior is taught to them.
That's
It's
right.
okay.
That's
It's okay in that department. That's
acceptable.
why they doing what they're
I was
doing.
going to say, you've been in many tough situations.
I told them that.
And you've dealt with.
Play the game.
All kinds
Know
of
it.
situations. Would you ever treat?
No,
suspects-
my job as a correction officer was to correct, not to neglect. I live by that. Because it could be my mom, it could be my father, and it could be everybody can make a mistake. I'm not judge and jury. That's not my job. I didn't sign up for that.
How confident with all
That's a universal terminology. Again, I'm Darren Green, president of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America Long Island chapter, and a co-worker, ex-co-worker of Ronald, and also a friend. We grew up together. Yeah, that's universal lingo, universal terminology for what we use to let another officer know that we are in service together. And one of the things I want you guys to really think about is that out of all the things that have been said here, when we think about the process of what's happening and what has happened across this country and with those things, when it comes to police training, okay, and I've been a training instructor in Nassau County Sheriff's Department, which I do not represent here today, for over 15 years. And one of the things that we looked at is that we need to start looking at the mental stability of officers.
That's right. That they recruit.
After they have been given a gun
Yes.
and a badge.
Yes.
I stated this a couple weeks ago with a case with Damon and I. We as officers have more power than the President of the United States. We have the ability to take life instantaneously. We decide in an instant who lives or dies. The President can order life to be taken, but we have the ability to take it. Officers now, that have been given this type of power, they take a psychological exam, as we all do, prior to getting the job. But we don't take a psychological exam after the job has been done. We're not held accountable for the mental status, the things that we've seen, the things that we've dealt with. And I think across this country, if we start looking at the mental stability of officers today, that 80% of our departments across the country would have to rehire immediately. Because there are some officers that need to be relieved of their duties. And what I call it, I call it when officers go crazy. When officers, and in this instance, again, we have some officers that obviously went crazy and lost their minds. Their mental culpability is at stake here, and it needs to be evaluated from every department across this country, especially here in this case.
Mr. Lanier, just two other quick questions. Did any of the customers, whether took the video as you requested? And the second thing is, what do you want to happen to these two officers?
I want the officer to be held accountable for their actions. They took an oath to protect and serve, just like I did. If you're wrong, own up to it. If you get penalized and you got caught with your pants down, you got to be held accountable for your action. That's what I want. I don't want to be treated like a second-class citizen because I earned my credentials. Treat me as such, as I would do to you.
When you said held accountable, do you want them to be fired? Do you
Oh,
want
absolutely,
apology?
absolutely. All the above. All the above. That's where it starts. When officers start to find out they're going to be held accountable, their pension is at risk, their job is at risk, I'm quite sure the other officers will just say, I'm not playing that game anymore. I have a family to feed. They up there playing Monopoly out there. Checkers, chess, with people's lives.
And that's the kind of DA's office, can they get involved?
I don't know. I mean,
How come they didn't get, could you?
well, this is 2 days ago.
Okay.
All right, let's just be real clear. This is 2 days ago. And so what Ms. Singus's office decides to do, I can't tell you. We can't run the DA's office. We can't run the government. Matter of fact, they can't run the government. But you're right. But one of the things that's really clear here is that we're not waiting for other people to do things for us.
Thank you.
We're taking things into our own hands because citizens have rights. And those rights have to be exercised. You're not going to silence us anymore, nor are you going to put us in the back seat and say we're going to be there soon. We're here now, and we're going to make sure that those rights are exercised.
Will you go to the DA's office?
We'll go any place we need to go to seek that elusive justice. Well, because we know the arc of the universe bends towards justice, as Dr. King said, and we're going to follow that arc until we find it. Because we're not giving up, no matter what happened in the second Tuesday in November.
And Fred, has there been other issues with the Garden City Police
Yes.
Department? Because
Absolutely.
know
I have other cases with the Garden City Police Department. They are notorious from historically to present day. As a matter of fact, it's not unusual for someone in Garden City to simply just want to go and look at the houses that they claim are supposed to be Garden City houses and be escorted out of the community because your skin happens to be of the darker hue.
That's right.
That is not unusual. So when they see a person who happens to be African American, in my view, they treated Mr. Lanier as though he were a suspect because he was a black man.